What a way to end off 2025 with yet my best reading month in physical book count and also page count. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video here on my channel, another reading video. However, it is a little bit late because we are already about almost 2 weeks into January and I have yet to make this video. We are going over all the books that I read in December, how I ended off the year, and let me just tell you, it was an amazing month. I did so well and I'm so proud of myself for accomplishing what I did because I was not expecting this amount of books or pages or also just completing all of my goals. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into it. Starting off the month, we had Red Rising. I started this on November 21st. I didn't end up finishing it till the 1st of December. I could have probably finished this in the month of December, but I just didn't really get to it. I did rate this 4 stars. I did enjoy this for the most part. I liked following our main character. I liked the world. I like how the world was described and some of the things that happened, and also how in a way you have this almost Hunger Games situation that everybody, when I was thinking it in my head, I didn't think that anybody else was thinking it until I went to the reviews after I finished my book, and I realized that other people thought about the Hunger Games as well, and it's only in this certain location, and I like some of the things that happened, and I just felt like it was very up my alley towards like the fantasy sci-fi type, more sci-fi I guess, but definitely my type of vibe in a way. It is like a game, but at the same time real stuff could happen, and I loved following a lot of what went on in this book. However, I did also read this fairly shortly after I read Red Queen, and I felt like these books were very similar just in the fact of like you are divided by blood and you have different factions in a way. That part I felt was very similar. There were some things that I really enjoyed more about Red Queen more than this one, but when I cut down and don't think about Red Queen, I can think about all the great things about this book. I definitely kind of think in a way this is overhyped, but also I would definitely recommend it, and I understand why it is so hyped. I felt like if I would have agreed with everybody else to a T, I probably would have rated it 4.5, 5 stars. I did, like I said, rate it 4 stars. So I really enjoyed it. I like the pacing. I definitely want to hop into the rest of the series. I just think for me specifically, I read it way too close to another book that was similar in some aspects, not a lot, and I kind of preferred Red Queen over this. I know that might sound a little bit weird. Maybe this year in 2026 I can pick up the next book in the series and continue, because I think I'm kind of done spacing out my series. I tried that last year more so because of my 25 and 25. I think I want to revisit a lot of these series and just kind of cross them all off my list and then move on to the next series and finish series, because I'm not a big fan of doing what everybody else does and starting one book in a series and moving on to a completely different book or a different series and then never coming back to this for multiple months, maybe multiple years. So I definitely think I'm gonna try and get back into it and try and finish it in 2026, but I have no idea if that's the case because I also don't know if I want to go out and buy the next books because I only had this first book. But we started off the month on a good note. Next, starting on the 3rd of December and going all the way to the 5th, I did start Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I did start this actually because I shoveled our entire, well, the blacktop section of our driveway. I didn't have at the time an audiobook, so I started this because I had this audiobook, and the other book I was reading, which is next that I finished, I didn't have one. So I listened to, I think, half of this book on audiobook in that one day. I flew through this book. It was actually really fast paced and it is more YA, but I think I kind of really enjoyed the series. I definitely want to get into the rest of the series this year, and I have book 2 right now on my January TBR. So I want to complete this and maybe find hardbacks from Half Price Books or something, because I don't necessarily want to go out and buy new books that I have to read and add to my physical TBR. Maybe replacing books and also matching these to another series I have by Rick Riordan. I might really enjoy how they all look on the shelf, and I really like some of the things that went on. I'm not really a Greek mythology person. I read the Odyssey for AP English back in like 9th grade, maybe 10th grade. It's been a very long time, so it's been a while since I've learned about, you know, who's this god besides like the normal gods that you might hear about, like Zeus and Poseidon, things like that. I understand who those are, but there were some other ones that I was like, I don't remember who this is until we went into more detail. But I do kind of like how a lot of these people are more children of these gods, and also they're at this, in a way, camp or summer camp, and they can either be there for the summer or they can be there long lifers at this camp. And I like the things that kind of were happening. I like the people he met along the way, and I also think that this ended off pretty decent, and I'm really intrigued about the second book. I actually rated this book 4.5 stars as well. Technically, before I started Percy Jackson, I was already reading this. This is Richard Hammond's On the Edge, and this is more his like little memoir, a little bit before and then around the time of his crash that he had in his dragster. And let me just tell you, I love this book so much. I started it on the 1st, didn't finish it till the 10th, but oh my goodness, the way I felt, the emotions I felt. This book, for the most part, I read a lot of it, and then one day I actually happened to find the audiobook. When I found the audiobook, it was right before, leading up to his crash. I started to clean the house, and it took me multiple hours because I was deep cleaning the house. So I threw on the audiobook and I was listening, and you have Richard and his point of view, and he's speaking in the audiobook leading up to the exact second of like the crash, and then also when he blacked out, passed out, whatever happened, and he had a lot of brain problems. And then we switch, we're in Mindy's point of view in the book, and also his wife Mindy is narrating. So then we have, after the crash, her kind of getting the phone call, what's kind of going on, her talking to her daughters, who I think they were like 6 and 4. They were very young. I don't remember exactly how old. And then you also have her going to the hospital and doing this. And then throughout that POV and multiple pages later, I'm talking probably like 20 or so later, she then gets the part where Richard's awake, but he kind of looks at her and he doesn't exactly know who she is. And the emotion that she had in her voice when she was doing this audiobook, I just felt it. And also I put myself in her shoes, and if this was my husband, how I would feel, because there were some times where Richard, because of his brain injury, he kind of was like being mean without knowing he was being mean. And also because he didn't know who she was, I could tell how hurt she was. I basically bawled in a way because I could not imagine my husband going through this. I could not imagine myself going through this in a way, and having my husband look at me and not know who I was and then get irritated because I was in the room with him. So I felt all the emotions at that same point. I knew everything was fine too, but in the moment I was so invested into this, and also while cleaning the house, that I just felt I didn't know how this would end. Even though I knew, you know, multiple years later when Top Gear ended and they went on to the Grand Tour, it was like 10 plus years on the Grand Tour, and then they just ended that in what, like 2022 or so. So I knew how his life went. I knew he was fine because this was the early 2000s when all this happened. But at the same time, I was just so invested into this book. I didn't technically rate it because it is a memoir. I would say like 4.5, 5 stars. It was so good. I highly recommend this for a memoir, especially if you're a car enthusiast, and also if you've already know who Richard Hammond is, James May, Jeremy Clarkson, any of the Top Gear Grand Tour. They're the OGs in my opinion, the only ones that I've ever watched, and I'm a little bit biased about that. I definitely recommend this. This was such a cool book, an entertaining book, and I'm sure he still has issues from time to time, but it's just a miracle, a grace from God, that he was able to, in a way, walk away from this crash. Not fully, but kind of regain himself. Like I said, I'm sure he still has issues from time to time, maybe even now, 10, 20 years later, but at the same time, he's able to get behind a wheel and drive a car. He's able to go places by himself without having to worry about potential seizures or other things, and he's able to like feed himself or go run a marathon, you know, just like the most random things he could go and do, and he's very lucky for that. And I just truly think that God was there for him and protected him. Next, I have Blood Sisters. I started this on the 10th of December and finished it on the 15th. I really actually enjoyed this. This was following technically 2 siblings, and I think we're following the oldest sibling, and then her younger sister has this best friend. They're kind of like inseparable, so it's like 3 girls, and you kind of get both before and after POVs, where it's, I don't remember how long, but when they were in a certain grade, or they were in like elementary school, and then when the main character, her 20s or 30s give or take, she's teaching this class at a college, and she's teaching them how to make stained glasses, and then at the same time she's kind of going through and hearing things at the back of her mind about her sister. Her sister got hit by a car and it kind of destroyed her life, let's just say. I'll just leave it at that. And then we're following like a mystery, but it's also got a little bit of a thriller. And you also have where she then gets this job at a prison. She's still working at the college, but while she's at this prison, she's also an art person teaching these prisoners how to draw, and somebody ends up drawing her. She thinks she has a stalker. There's some twists and turns about certain characters, and then some other people that she meets that she doesn't believe, and then some things actually happen, and she's like, wait a minute, I have to rethink all this. And I love the ending. I liked how a lot of this book went. I was very invested the whole time. I did kind of call what happened with the actual sister. I called something, but I wasn't fully there, and I just think that it was kind of good. There was a couple bits where I could feel like people can get really annoyed, because there were multiple times where give us a little bit more information and then it would end the chapter and we'd start a whole new day. So it was almost like you're getting little bits and pieces, but not really. It's just little crumbs, not actual pieces that you can connect any dots too much with. So I can see where that is really annoying, but I went in with no expectation. I went in not really knowing too much about this book, just what was on the back, and then also just not really caring. I just wanted a read to kind of cleanse after reading Richard Hammond's book, because this was just a completely different book than I thought it was going to be. So I wanted something I didn't have to think about and was more fast-paced, and I definitely got that, and I enjoyed this. I rated this 4 stars. I do recommend this unless you're going to dissect this as a thriller book, like completely break it down for the plot, for how thrilling, or if you're also a really big thriller reader, I would not recommend this book. But if you're kind of like me, where you just want a more fast-paced, chill in a way book, then yes, I would definitely recommend. And then finally, I finished the last book in the Giver Quartet. This is Sun. I started on the 15th and read it until the 18th, and oh my goodness, I loved it so much. It wrapped up exactly like I thought. There were so many things that we finally got the final puzzle pieces from the last couple books. Giver, Gathering Blue, and Messenger, all 3 of those combined. I ended up liking these books more because I can see where these books have so much information, and without reading them, I don't think Sun would have been as good. However, at the time when I first read them, I was annoyed because I just wanted to follow the ending of The Giver and continue on with the rest of The Giver, and we didn't get that. We went into different characters, and in a way, Sun started with a whole different character, and I was a little annoyed because I was like, no way, we're gonna get a fourth character that I'm not really gonna be invested in, I don't really care about. But then it was like, oh my gosh, I see how she's connected, and I see what she did to get out of the community, and I see all these things that are happening, and puzzle pieces are being put into place, and I was seeing the overall picture, and I just loved how this book ended. This book as well was 4 stars. Probably my favorite book out of the quartet. The Giver was amazing, and I think I rated that one 4 stars. The other 2 were only 3 stars. This book in particular, like 4, almost 4.5 stars. It was better than The Giver when I look at it as an all-around, especially since I've read The Giver twice now, so I already know a lot that happened. But I think without obviously reading the other books, I don't think Sun would have been as good. I'm here for it. If you have never read The Giver, I would highly recommend trying to find, especially like this, an all-in-one type book, and definitely go into it, read it. And then I think there's just the one movie for The Giver. I've never seen any other movies for the rest of the books, but if they could make an entire movie to do this entire quartet, I think it would be so amazing. I definitely recommend this as well. And I don't think that there's a certain age. I think you could even be like 30 years old and it would still be very entertaining. It is more YA, but it's one of those like classic, it's almost like Narnia, where it's a classic YA that can go with you as you grow up. Then I picked up The Last Thing He Told Me, starting on the 18th and finishing it on the 21st. I thought this book was going to be a little bit different. I thought it was going to follow more of a thriller book that I had already read before, and then I got into it and I seen that I was completely wrong, and I did kind of enjoy it. It was unique. There were some things about it that when I was looking up reviews, I could totally see their points. Maybe not as much as some other books that I've read, but I rated it 3.5 stars, and I do want to go into the next one. Hopefully the next one is going to be the final one, like it's just a duology, because how this one ended was a little bit not frustrating, but kind of interesting, I'll just say. And then also I learned that this was a part of a series, so I do want to read that next one, just kind of hopefully get all my questions answered. And I don't know if I would recommend this too much. I think in a way, if you're not really a thriller person, maybe then, but I definitely could see where a lot of people with their reviews, they didn't like this book. They also did not like the ending, and then apparently with the next book, I seen a couple where they did not like that book either. I enjoyed it myself for the most part. I will keep it in the future, keep it on my shelves. Like I said, I will be trying to find the second book and read that book as well. Maybe not anytime soon, but it is a part of my series now, a series that I need to finish. Definitely want to get into it, and I like the cover. I just definitely think that it's gonna be to each their own type deal. And then I hopped into my final book, a part of my 10 Before the End. I started this on the 21st and I actually ended it on the 22nd. It took me basically just a day to read this book. Loved this book. This was so interesting. This is during the war, so we have a World War II in a way timeline, but at the same time it's not following that section of the war that I feel like it's very common. Usually when you think about the war, we think of Paris, we think of Germany, and we think of the United States. Those are the 3 spots that normally is always talked about and books are always written about. We never really get parts of like Russia, and in this one, this is Lithuania and other parts that Stalin was taking over. And I don't know, I really enjoyed the book. This, I feel like we took, I'd say like 10% maybe, on a train. They were traveling, they got taken away by the Soviet police, and then they were kind of herded into train cars, taken to working camps in a way. I thought it was very entertaining. I loved the characters. It's one of these books that makes you kind of think. If you've ever read Sarah's Key, it's one of those types of books. I think also Kristen Hanna's. I've never read Kristen Hanna's, but her, I don't remember what it's called, but it's got the Eiffel Tower on the cover. It's one of those books that just really makes you think about that situation and the dynamic, because we're not following the major 3 countries that I feel like we're always following in books. It was very unique. It's also like a YA romance. There's some bad things that kind of happen, like in real life there are bad things that happen. It definitely makes you have feeling, realize how you are or how you live and how thankful you should truly be. It kind of like humbles you in a way. And then also after this, I asked my husband if we could watch the movie because I found it for free. I think it was on Amazon Prime. We ended up watching the movie and I definitely enjoyed the movie, but I can tell from my husband's reaction versus my reaction. Because I read the book, I knew a lot about what was going on in the movie, versus my husband was like, what's going on? They're not really explaining. And I was like, that makes sense. I could see that, especially the the ending. If I didn't read this book, I don't think I would understand the ending, so I kind of explained it to him afterwards. And then there were just a few things that were a little bit wrong, but seeing the movie too after reading this, I felt like was an easier way to picture what all went on. And originally this book was actually called Between Shades of Grey, and then for the movie it's called Ashes and Snow, and that's why they came out. They rebranded or republished some books with the movie cover called Ashes and Snow. I definitely recommend this book. I think it's one that everybody should read, especially if you want a historical fiction. It's YA and it's like fast paced. At least in my mind it was fast paced, and some of the characters that you read about were very entertaining, or like they had really good backstory, and it was also relevant to the plot. I rated this book 4.5 stars. It was almost a 5-star read for me. And then next I hopped into Lewis Lamar's The Cherokee Trail. I started this actually for Christmas Eve. We were headed up to my mom's, so it was about a 3-hour drive, 2.5-hour drive. And then I didn't finish this until the 27th, even though I thought it was only going to take me like a day or so because it's 170 pages. I read majority of it up there. I think I had like 70 pages left, if that, on the way back home. I love this book. I love how Lewis Lamar wrote this character, the main character, the female. I love how he made this book because she is with her husband and she is in this house that she grew up in. It's during the 60s, during the Civil War, so 1860s, and her house that she grew up in actually gets burnt down. So then she's traveling west for a job after her husband is murdered, and that's not a spoiler because it's in the back of the book, but she's moving west to start a new life after her husband is killed. And then there's this person who is kind of, let's just say, following through with her, and there is another character who in a way is upset by her and what she did to him, so he tries to circle back and get her, basically make her pay for what she did, and she ends up like kicking his butt. There's multiple times that this female stood up for what she was doing, and she was working at a like station in a way along this trail that people would come in with their wagons. They would stop, maybe spend the night if they had the sleeping arrangements, but otherwise they would get food, refresh themselves, get new horses, and then continue on their way. And I really enjoyed this. I think Lewis Lamar and his writing is very entertaining. I want to get more Western books, especially more books from him. I really recommend this, especially because it's so short. It's so easy to read. I love the cover. I like a lot of the characters that went on in this. It was so easy to follow, and all I kept picturing was a certain, I think it's called Briggs Station in Red Dead 2, but when I was playing Red Dead 2 and you go by the station that's a little bit in the woods out of nowhere, that's exactly what I was thinking of in my head, plus like more because you have stables and other things. So it just helped playing that game and then going into this book and reading this as well. I rated this 4 stars, and honestly it's one of my favorite books of the month. And then I actually went into Dead Man's Folly by Agatha Christie. This I read and finished in the same day. It was very short. I think it was only like 125 pages, give or take. I also rated it 3.5 stars. It was so entertaining. I love Agatha Christie's books, and also I love that it's kind of following, you have this game in a way, and it's following this game that also implies that there's a death, but it's like a fake death, and then there ends up being a murder, and then we have to kind of solve it. And we also have one of my favorite characters, which he has an entire series I did not know about, but Agatha Christie made this character. His name is like Detective Poirot, I do believe. I can never say his name. The first book that I think I ever read involving this character is Poirot Loses a Client, and I think it's also called Dumb Witness, but the copy I have is called Poirot Loses a Client, and I really love that book. And then seeing him or rereading him in this book, I was so excited as soon as he showed up because I already knew I love this character. I knew he was going to figure it out, and also I just love the steps that he takes and how he talks to people and some of his, like, just his attitude, I'm just gonna say. So I definitely recommend Agatha Christie books across the board. I love Dead Man's Folly. I thought it was really enjoyable, and I also love how short it was since I finished it in an entire day. And all of these books I really loved. However, we're gonna get into my next book that I really did not like. I started this book on the 22nd and didn't finish it till the 31st. It's a 300-page book, and I tried hard to kind of read it. I just hated it, and it's just one that I knew I wasn't gonna like going into it, but I was tired of looking at it on my shelves because it had sat for a couple years, and I just wanted to tackle it. I did tackle it, but I also skipped a lot of pages of this book. It is Flock. I originally found this book in the YA fantasy section. It was misplaced in a used bookstore out in Las Vegas, and I thought the cover, it looks fantasy. Does it not? Yeah, no, it's not. It came to my conclusion after I had bought it that this was adult, I'm just gonna say, and I'll just leave it at that. How I've been describing this book, and I really don't care if you have an opinion opposite of me because this is my opinion. Basically, this is just lust. This entire book, like 75% of this, no, I'd say like 85% of this book is just lust, pure lust, and it made me so sick to read it. I really wanted to DNF it, but I was like, no, I've come this far. I think I was like 150 pages into it, and I was like, I'm already like halfway through it. Come so far into the year, only DNFing one book, one kind of series in a way. I didn't want to DNF another book. It was the final month of December. I just wanted it to basically be off my shelves, but for me to have read it, and I also was curious if there was a plot at all throughout this whole book because there were so many things that I was skipping. Come to find out, there is a little bit of a plot, but it's on the very last like 10% of the book. In the beginning, we're following this girl who was, I think, 18 in the very beginning, but she had just turned 19. But basically, her mom runs out of money, moves in with the boyfriend. The boyfriend decides she's not allowed to live with them, so she goes and lives with her dad. Her dad is like rich, only ever paid her mom money for her when she was growing up, and then as soon as she hit 18, he stopped all the checks. Her mom couldn't afford stuff, yada yada yada, you know the timeline. It all makes sense. While she's living with her dad, she ends up having to work as like an internship, I do believe, for his company. He wants her to learn how to basically function, how to kind of be mature in finance and other things in throughout his company, because one day she could own it, I guess, and there's some other things. And I was like, okay, that's a cool plot. Well, then she meets this supervisor of hers. Supervisor, mind you. They apparently, I'm not gonna say they fall in love because I don't really think it's love, and also the way they went about it, it's like they didn't really date. There were so much of this book, I'd say like 50% for sure, that I probably ended up skipping because there were so many different scenes. So it just really made me feel gross to even have this book because it's just pure lust. And then we get to the very end, and there is something that happens where there's, I'm just gonna say, this club, and we'll just leave it at that because I don't want to actually spoil the book if you do want to go into this. But there's this club, and I was like, hey, there's a real plot here if we're talking about the club. And then there's other things at this club or said club that go on, and she's kind of like, oh, I got you figured out, because they kind of, I'll just say, have a plan for her. So then this plan goes through and she thinks she has everything figured out, and then we get a whole new character at the end. And me, because I didn't want to go into this, I decided to try and look up the rest of the series because I was like, I'm not DNFing it, but I'm never going to pick up the rest of the series. And everybody says that Exodus will ruin you. Well, I found a Reddit post about a guy being like, is this really, did I just waste my time reading this? Because in book one, this is what happened. At the end of book one, this person shows up, and then apparently in book two, even though she feels this way, she went with this person in book two, blah 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 blah. And I was like, I'm glad I didn't waste my time because I would have been upset. And also, it just sounds like the second book is just as bad in my opinion, and I am so sorry, but I don't like dirty books, and also especially the way that this was portrayed. And because I thought it was YA fantasy until after I bought it, I think it was like a month later after I bought it, that I realized it was not YA at all. So I'm kind of upset, I'm not gonna lie. I also just rated this 2 stars because I wanted to be done with it. It's one of those that I ended the year off on a really bad book, and I also ironically started the year off. The first book I read in 2025 was also a very bad book because of one specific scene. So at least I completed 2025. I had good books in between. I started it off bad, I ended it off bad, but at least I had good books as well in there. I just hope that 2026 is not like that. So far it's not like that. I haven't finished my first book, even though I'm halfway through it and we are on the 8th, but it's also over 1,000 pages, so I have a little bit of excuse. For Flock specifically, I do not recommend. And there you have it. There is all 10 books that I read in the month of December. Most of them are really amazing reads in my opinion. I had a lot of fun. I was not expecting to read 10 books. I was expecting potentially max 5 books, and then I just felt like I was in the swing of the holidays. I was reading 100+ pages a day. I really was enjoying a lot of the books that I was reading, and I just had the good vibes at the same time. This was just one of the best reading months I think I've ever had. But let's go into some monthly statistics for the month, even though it's the final month of the year. First off, let's talk about my 25 and 25. At the end of November, I only had 3 books left on that list. We had Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, Red Rising, and On the Edge with Richard Hammond. I finished those 3 books this month, so we had completed my 25 and 25 at the beginning of the month. My first time ever completing, even though I've only done it for 2 years, my first time ever completing that list was so amazing. I love that. Now let's talk about my physical TBR. Apparently for the month of November, I had ended the month off at 79 books. I did read 10 books. However, I was not at 69 books because I went to Half Price Books because I had a 10% off coupon, and I used that because it was expiring for the new year, and I bought a couple books, and I added to, in total at the end of the year, I had 75 books left on my physical TBR. We'll call that a win in a way. Like, I failed my book goal because I wanted to be 60 to 65 books on my physical TBR, so I will say I failed at that, but I'm only 10 books off of that. Not right now because I just bought a 5-in-1 Agatha Christie story. I know it's a problem. I'm trying really hard. So I'm up to 80 books right now. It's one of those that I feel like I did really good last year. Like, I tried really hard. I did buy a lot of books, but I read 56 books in total. So I feel like since every year I have a better reading taste, I can tackle more. And a lot of my books are the next in series also. I have a lot of series on my physical TBR and a lot of bigger series, like 3+ books. With me finishing the year, like I said, I had 56 books that I completed in the year 2025. Mystery and sci-fi were tied in the month of November, but now mystery was my top genre at 10 books, and then sci-fi was now my my second place again at 9 books. So in total for the month of December, I read 10 books, which equated to 2,982 pages. That was the most amount of pages I read in a month. And sadly, I had 0 5 stars, which kind of sucks, but so many 4.5 stars. I think 2 or 3 4.5 stars. They were so close to 5-star reads. Overall, I am so happy about this month. I'm so happy on how I ended the year off. Even if I had one bad book, 1 book out of 10 is not very bad at all. I had a fun time. I'm so excited for 2026. I already have my TBR jar prompt video out for January. I already have so many amazing reads, in my opinion, sitting on my shelves waiting to be read, and I just feel like 2026 is going to be so much better than 2025. And I had a lot of fun this year. I had a lot of fun. It was such a great time, and I'm so excited to see what this year brings and also to see what all I accomplished. So thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the end of the year book wrap up, all the books that I read in 2025. I'm hoping to film that sometime soon. I am starting to get sick. Actually, today my throat is killing me, so I'm so sorry about if this video, it has been a little bit annoying. I keep messing up my words, and also I just feel very sick and congested, so it might be a little bit longer before I film that video, but I do have it in the future. Hopefully it'll be out in the month of January. I have a few things I also want to post, not necessarily book related, here in the next couple weeks, so be on the lookout for that. And if you're curious, there's always a book playlist down in my description. Thank you all so much. I hope to see you in another video here on my channel, and as always, God bless.